Thanks. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here today with us for the two virtual sessions for the School Garden Leadership Training Series for the 2022 and 2023 school year. We're excited to welcome those of you who are new into this community and also to say hello to those of you who might have attended the series in previous years. This session is titled Gardening with a Goal, Plan, Grow, Learn, and Taste in the Florida School Garden. And we'll have a second session in December to follow this one. My name is Tiffany Torres, and I'm the State School Garden Specialist with Florida Agriculture in the Classroom, and I'll be facilitating our workshop today. So we have a lot to dig into, and let's get started. And first off, I want to quickly go over some Zoom housekeeping tips. Viewing modes can be found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You may need to press the escape button to exit full screen to view some of the options. We recommend using side-by-side speaker view during this webinar to best view the presentations. And you'll notice there's a divider in the screen. You can toggle left and right to enlarge the screen or the speaker as you wish. If at any point you want to see who else is in the room with us today, you can click the participants button. And we'll be using the chat feature on and off the webinar, so please go ahead and locate that, including for our Q&A session at the end. And lastly, please be sure to mute your audio and video throughout our content portion for recording purposes, and you'll definitely have a chance to unmute and connect during our informal networking time at the end. Closed captioning is enabled, and all webinars will be available by recording on our YouTube channel, and CEUs are available upon request as well. So one of our goals with this series is to increase networking across the state of Florida between educators and school garden leaders. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and share your name and your school or organization, maybe with the county that you're coming from and any land acknowledgements you'd like to share about that region, and what you're most excited about this school year. So I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the very valuable work we do with school gardens takes place on the land of Native communities. And if you're not familiar with the Native communities in your region, we encourage you to take a moment to type your location to the website that we'll share a link to in the chat box. We acknowledge that this website doesn't provide a comprehensive list, but it can be a very useful tool to help get you started. And also, I want to note that you can rename yourself, including your pronouns, in Zoom by clicking the three dots up near your picture. All right, so as you're adding to the chat, I want to share with you a visual image. I'm definitely really into maps of the abundance of our school garden projects present on this webinar and who has attended in the past. So you can see this is data that we collected from registrants from 2020, 2021, 2022 for the School Garden Leadership Training Series. And we have a lot of people all around the state joining us from a variety of different leadership roles. So we have over 250 school garden projects present as a part of this network in Florida, representing 40 Florida counties. Some people have attended over the years from other states. So we have 4 different states represented, and some people have even registered from other countries. And really, it's a broad snapshot of both urban and rural, direct and indirect educators, and ECE and the K through 12 sphere of influence. So take a look at this network, it's yours, and we want to continue to grow it through this series and additional resources and convenings. And while you're getting to know each other, we want to tell you a little bit about the series hosts. So this series is hosted in partnership between Florida Ag in the Classroom and the University of Florida IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program. A little bit about us at Florida Ag in the Classroom. We are a statewide nonprofit organization funded by the specialty license plate, the Ag Tag. Florida Ag in the Classroom connects kids to healthy food and Florida agriculture through educational resources, teacher professional development, grants, and other farm to school programming. Florida Ag in the Classroom has a vision to ensure every student in pre-K through 12 education is aware of and appreciates agriculture and natural resources in the state of Florida. And you can see some of our services on the left here and our contact information on the right. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we're happy to support your gardening journey. And our second amazing host is the University of IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program, otherwise known as FNP. UFI Kids Extension Family Nutrition Program helps limited resource families in Florida access more nutritious food choices on a budget and adopt healthier eating and physical activity habits to reduce the risk of obesity and chronic disease. And they've been providing free nutrition education through SNAP Ed since 1990 in Florida. They have free resources for local organizations to support and promote healthy eating and physical activity in a wide variety of communities. And they're currently serving more than 30 counties throughout the state. All right, so with all of that, we're going to dive into our first interactive portion of the webinar. I'd like you to go ahead and try to join Mentimeter. This is a different platform that we'll be using for a large portion of our webinar today. So you can do that a couple of different ways. In the chat, you should see the link. You can go ahead and click that link from your phone or your computer. It's probably best to do on your phone if you're already viewing this webinar on your computer. You can scan that QR code, or you can go to menti.com and then enter these numbers that you see here, 13473856. So I'm going to go ahead and pause my screen share and switch over to Mentimeter. Again, that information is in the chat. Okay, could someone come off mute and confirm that they can see the screen correctly?
Yes, looks good.
Awesome. So our first Mentimeter activity is we want to get to know a little bit more about who's in the room and what categories they belong to. It looks like people are joining. So what is your school garden leadership role is the question that we have here. We have a lot of teachers in the room. A couple SNAP Ed representatives, some nonprofit, volunteer master gardeners or parents, University Extension, other, curious what our other friend is. Awesome. All right, we're gonna move on then. So the next question that I want you to answer is what makes a school garden program sustainable? We're gonna dive into this in our presentation in a minute, but we want to hear some words from you. What makes a school garden program sustainable? And you can type in more than one answer and they should load onto the screen as we all participate here. All right, I see some results coming in. Consistency, effort, funding, knowledge. Ooh, here they all come. Awesome. Dedicated leaders, love that one. Organization. Volunteers to water, very, very specific and important, yes. Teamwork. Fidelity, so maybe like continuity over time, cooperation, consistency. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for participating in that. Looks like we've gotten responses from most folks. So I'm going to go ahead and share back to the other screen now. Okay, so we should be back on our presentation. Thanks so much for participating in our first Mentimeter activity of the day. We'll be using that again later. So if you want to keep it up on your phone or other device, you're welcome to do that. And so, yeah, that was just a fun activity to kind of get some words out there and co-create a word cloud around sustainability. So we talked, this is kind of a buzzword that comes up a lot. But when talking about school garden sustainability, we like to frame this success into 3 different spheres for this training series. So those include gardening knowledge, curriculum connections, and leadership skills. So this webinar series is really designed for Florida school garden leaders of all levels to build gardening confidence, foster collaboration among leaders, and to strengthen garden programs for long-term success. And our ultimate goal is to grow garden leaders, not just garden weeders. That's kind of our tagline. And we'll be coming back to these spheres throughout the training, so you can kind of track which one we're talking about on the PowerPoint slides as we go. And remember that you can always continue the conversations that you start here around sustainability with other educators throughout the network by joining our Facebook group, which we will link in the chat as well. There we go. Okay. And so a little overview of today, what we're going to talk about. So first, we're going to go through series objective. We have a new series objective for the 2022 and 23 school year, so I'll dive into that momentarily. But really what we'll be focusing on today is vision, goal setting, and action steps. So kind of this like planning portion related to sustainability with school gardens. And we're going to be walking you through a new really cool resource that we just created called the Florida School Garden Planner. We'll also be touching on kid-friendly or kid-approved garden props, which we're going to recommend to you this year. And we'll also be looking into square foot gardening as well. And we'll have a couple of curricula options that pair with all of those. All right, so what is new this school year? We are excited to share with you our series annual objectives. So we have an objective that school garden leaders will learn to plan, plant, maintain, and harvest in their school garden to host a tasting celebration with students during the 2022 and 2023 school year. And you can see some awesome pictures from folks who attended the series throughout the last school year, contributed all around the state, actually eating their produce, whether that's on the garden cafeteria line, in a cooking class, in the school garden, or supplemented as a snack in the school cafeteria or after school garden club. Those are all fantastic ways to eat produce. And we have a lot of awesome content out there for you all from previous webinars that go through very specific things like irrigation or seed saving. But this year we wanted to kind of help you think about what is your vision, then what is your objective, and to try to create goals around that as well. So this is our series annual objective. And what we want you to do is start thinking about types of tasting events that you might want to hold. So this could be all the way from small scale to classroom tasting, all the way up to a community-wide event. So I'll go through just a couple of examples to start you thinking on this process around what you might have capacity and resources for. And if you don't have those resources, we'll be providing you with opportunities to think about how to obtain them and network and gain those assets that you need for holding a successful event. So the first small scale example of how to really garden with a goal and actually get the students tasting what they're growing in the garden would be a classroom tasting event. So this can be a simple exercise that you do with students. It could be just one crop. You see here in the picture, they made salsa, which is kind of a value added, but it could be as simple as growing a cucumber and slicing that up. You could frame it as a taste test. This is kind of coined language where you might have like a try it, like it, love it poster at the end, so students get to vote and have some buy-in about what they're tasting. And another very easy and simple example of this is peppermint tea. So it doesn't even have to be a full-blown crop, could be something more sensory-oriented. Grow some peppermint, have some peppermint tea, and then talk about what that experience was really like for the students. A second kind of scaled up approach might be an after-school garden club or an after-school club like 21st Century or something like that. So you could use single or multiple crops. You might want to explore if there is already an after-school club, whether they have funding to kind of purchase additional food to supplement whatever you're tasting from the garden so that it can feed a wider variety of students. And an example of this might be pollinator-themed food arts. This is from a 21st Century after-school club where we can see that they made like a little bug out of some different vegetables, and some of those were harvested from the school garden. And then third, kind of scaling up again, thinking about cooking a meal together. So multiple props could be used in this. Maybe you're thinking about a themed meal. So this could be, you know, a pizza garden party, or maybe around the holidays, some kind of holiday themed garden party. And that's going to determine what you're going to plant in the school garden, right? Whatever it is that you want to be able to taste together as a part of that theme. So you might want to look into including a culinary class in this, and it also is a great tie-in for cultural connections. So then scaling up even further, we can think about different types of tasting events that engage beyond just the school garden, one classroom or after school garden club, and maybe more of a cafeteria-wide tasting approach might be your speed. So this works well if the garden is maintained by maybe more than one teacher, for example, and is more of a shared resource for the school community. You could use just a single garden crop if you wanted to. So this picture is from a school in Tallahassee, and they did a kind of taste test in the cafeteria just with cucumbers. And you can think about supplementing, if it's a large population that you're trying to reach, supplementing with local cucumbers or local product from a farmer. So that's another great way to tie in that farm to school aspect. And you could serve this on the cafeteria line as supplementing what students are already offering and work with food nutrition services to do that. Or you could serve it off the line and simply pass out, you know, a little cup and have everyone taste and crunch at the same time. And then next we have garden to cafeteria programming. So I'll be specific and say this is usually more of a well-formed, robust program. So this would be single or multiple crops that are grown specifically in a part of the school garden with food safety in mind. And usually a food safety plan would be required for something like this. And partnered with FNS to then have the students usually harvest that and then send it into the school cafeteria. And that would be sometimes incorporated onto the line for the other students to try, or it might again be like kind of separate and highlighted and celebrated as its own success. So an example of this is from Island Coast High School, and I believe the students were able to vote on what they wanted to name their lettuce variety that they grew and then served on the lunch line. And one of the names that they chose was called Learning Lettuce. So that was a really cute example of student buy-in, building that cultural norm around school gardening and garden to cafeteria programming. And then lastly, we have a community-wide event. So you could think again about single or multiple crops, but oftentimes, especially in Title I schools, there might be a family engagement night or some kind of event that is required to happen already. And you could think about having the garden celebrated as a part of this event and really incorporating it into the wider school culture that way. So this is an example of, you know, a cooking night at a family event at a school. So those are just a few things to consider as you are coming up with your vision and goal for the year, and ways that you can celebrate this year with the ways that you can celebrate farm to school, sorry. So October, I did want to flag, October is National Farm to School Month. So this is hosted by the National Farm to School Network, and they have a ton of awesome resources on their website available for you. If you want to download posters or order materials. I know we only have a little bit of time left in October this year, but hopefully if not this year, you can make it a point to celebrate next. And a lot of the tasting ideas and connections that we're making on this webinar and the one on December 1st will also be found in the Florida Crunch Guide. So this is an event toolkit all about how to hold taste tests and really just celebrate Florida grown produce with Florida kids. And you can find that available to download on the Family Nutrition Program website as well. And lastly, if the garden to cafeteria programming was of interest to you, I did want to highlight the School Garden Food Safety Certification Program. This is with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So they currently have openings for this program. Basically, you go through training and then you write your own food safety plan. And once you are approved, then you would receive up to $500 worth of gardening supplies for schools who become certified. And this is really just a great way to allow for easier access to garden produce to be served in the cafeteria. and to bolster that partnership with food and nutrition services as well. So the link is available there for you. If you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to us as well. And just quickly, I want to give you 2 examples of these types of taste tests in action, or tasting events in action. So the first is W.R. Toller K-8 school. This is in Liberty County, Florida, in the Panhandle. And this is a cooking in the classroom example. So this was one classroom, again, kind of scaled down approach. And what they did is they wanted to grow mostly lettuce to taste. So you can see there in the upper left-hand corner, the kids are harvesting the lettuce, and they're able to then cook in the classroom and put this together into these beautiful salads that you see here on the right, which were supplemented by other food that was brought in by Florida Department of Agriculture at the time. And then we also supplemented that with some locally sourced Satsuma juice. So again, it was a great way to kind of start small, grow a garden with a goal in mind, and every student got to taste something from the garden, as well as engage in a nutrition focus. That was another one of the goals that the teacher had set, having a 15-minute nutrition lesson paired with a make and take activity, and to learn about Florida agriculture and sample those products and live in person. Next, we have another version of that. This is from Calhoun County in the Panhandle, Carr Elementary and Middle School. And they want to do something similar where they had an entire day. So this was a salad day, and the entire garden was planted, as you can see there, with different varieties of lettuce. And once they were ready to harvest, they planned an event day for a farmer to come out, as well as a chef, and to really just be guests and have a celebratory day around what they grew in the garden. So most of what the kids ate that day was grown in the garden and was not supplemented outside, but we did have some extra products as well. And it was just a fun way to do the meet and greet with the Satsuma farmer. And again, another one of the goals was to reinforce nutrition education that the students were receiving in the classroom by getting to taste what they're learning about through those lessons. This also existed as a gateway to kind of garden to cafeteria programming, because this was the first time that the school garden coordinator was able to kind of connect with the food nutrition services department and have them wash the produce before it then came back out and got prepared. So it started some of those conversations and opened that door for further garden to cafeteria programming. All right, so with all of that in mind, those are our SMART objective is really for you to pick one of those on your gardening journey this year, and to hopefully develop a garden plan that will allow you to execute some kind of tasting event and to successfully grow whatever it is you need to do to hold that event. So we're going to switch gears now and talk a little bit about the Foundations for Sustainable School Garden program and some of the resources that we've developed to help you put that plan into place. So why school gardens? There are a lot of reasons why school gardens are important and effective. The research shows that they are impactful for academic reasons, shifting environmental attitudes, social norms, emotional well-being, nutrition and health, exploring careers in agriculture, and so much more. And we're curious, what is your why? So if you want to go ahead and share in the chat some reasons why you do school garden work, we would love to hear from you. And as you're doing that, I'm going to go through this kind of scaled approach one more time. So like I said, we have an objective for this series, but our vision is overall just to provide a robust resource for school garden leaders in the state of Florida. So this year we're kind of zooming in and we're saying we want that to be a more actionable objective. And we have created this objective of a taste test. Beyond that, you want to start thinking about your goals as well. So breaking this down further, what are the goals that will help you achieve this really time-bound objective? And we're going to go through what SMART goals might look like for that. And then once you have identified those goals, really breaking those down further and thinking about your action steps. So again, this is a resource that we created to help walk you through this process in real time. We're not going to do it here today, but some of our in-person workshops around the state will offer an opportunity to engage with this resource, and Kelly Wilson will be sharing the resource on screen in a little while. So I just wanted to plant that seed. And you can see some of the topics here too. So creating a vision for your school garden, we kind of scale down from there to then thinking about your team, your SMART goals, and your action plan. So again, following that tiered approach. So grounding into your vision. Before you build a garden, it's really important to think specifically about how you and your class and your school community will use the garden. And there's so many reasons to do this. There's so many ways to do this. Is it a general resource for the whole and integrated into every classroom? Is it going to be used as a curriculum enhancement? Will be used for celebration and community events like we're talking about right now. Connecting to the neighborhood and fostering community partnerships, used for certain grade levels or maybe special needs students. Maybe it's connected to after school or summer care programs, or maybe it's integrated into the cafeteria and feeding programs. Really just getting very specific about what it is that you want to do in the school garden will help inform that vision and ground you for success going forward. So if you want to go ahead and share what you think your vision might be, we would love to hear from you as well. And next, I want to talk about SMART goal setting. So we have SMART goals here that, and most of you are probably familiar with this acronym, but it's a goal that would be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So really making sure to hit all of those points when you're coming up with your specific goals. So it's not just saying, I want to grow a garden, but maybe getting really specific and saying, I want to grow a garden that is going to result in hosting a tasting event by December. And the goal that I might set to do that, that could be our annual objective. The goal that we might set to do that would be, I'm going to take 2 beds, raised beds, and I'm going to plant them with kale using the square foot gardening technique, maybe by October. If you're a tasting event, it's going to be in December, so that you have enough time. So again, that goal kind of hits all of these factors of being very specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And it's really easy to look over this. So we want to encourage you and give you a template and resources to move through it through our school garden planner. And then once you have those goals in mind, again, narrowing that down further and considering what steps you need to take to accomplish that specific goal. So we have a chart here. This is a page from the planner that helps you think about what actually needs to be done. When should it be done? Is there a deadline? Are there any resources that you need that you don't have? Are there any potential challenges that you might come into contact with? Maybe there's some support that you need. So thinking about your network and who's out there. And then what is the result of this? Did it actually get accomplished? So this is just a great way to think through that whole process, moving from vision to annual objective to goal, and then into your action steps. So with that, I believe Susan Hassett is here, and I was hoping that she'd be willing to still share some about their goals and objectives with Lee County Schools and the Healthy Living Collaborative. Are you out there, Susan?
I'm here.
Oh, I see you. There you are. Great. Would you be willing to share a little bit?
Sure. We have a lofty goal. Last year, we did a pilot program at Island Coast High School where they produced lettuce through their agriculture certification class. And they produced enough not only for their own cafeteria, but also for 3 other schools. And so Tiffany had referenced that earlier. One of the names of the lettuce was Learning Lettuce. Probably the most whimsical name was Lipsy Lopsy Leaf. So our Food and Nutrition Services program helped coordinate the transfer of the lettuce over to these other schools. And our FNS program helped us with the marketing by creating these cute signs that would go on to the cafeteria line whenever that lettuce was on the line. So students could recognize it was the good stuff. And the cafeteria managers heard them saying that, and they went from students choosing 15 salads to completely selling out. It got to 150 just because that's all the lettuce there was. It was gone. And that happened over and over. So this year, our goal is to expand that. Students at Island Coast already at the beginning of the year went to another high school on the other side of the county, Eastleigh High School, and helped them build the hydroponic towers to grow the lettuce. And so that's already been done. That school's ready to go. And then the plan is for Island Coast and those students at Eastleigh to set up the next 2 schools. And so they want to expand in a train the trainer type program until we have 6 schools that are doing this. We also think that 3 of our other schools that have gardens already could also get on board with this pretty easily. And so we're promoting the garden certification opportunity that Tiffany talked about. We're also conducting workshops. We had one scheduled for October 8th, and we've had to postpone because we were hit pretty hard. Right now, we're working with UF-IFAS to prepare some restoration in these school gardens. Some of them were hit really hard. The great news is Island Coast High School lost its greenhouse. It got smashed by Ian, but the hydroponic towers just twirled in the wind and they're still growing the lettuce. So this is going to be Ian lettuce. I think it should be an extra special celebration when they serve it on the line because it was resilient. So in the spring, all these schools that are involved will do an evaluation piece where they ask the students what they thought of the lettuce, but they'll also do a community event where it's taste testing, invite the community in, celebrate all the partners that have helped accomplish this. To make this happen, we do have a USDA Farm to School grant this year, an implementation grant that I'm really excited about. And we also have our Food and Nutrition Services focusing on this, and they have created a new position, assistant manager for school gardens. And that wonderful woman is going to start on Monday, and she'll be going garden to garden to help them manage their planting, harvesting, record keeping. We're asking them just to weigh how much lettuce they're able to harvest weekly and to document their timing on planting, that kind of thing, so that we can see what the impact is. So we think we can still do this, even though we are kind of starting over a little bit here, but I think it's going to give us all hope. So everybody I've talked to is ready to get going. And while we're at it, let's plant some flowers too.
Thank you so much for sharing, Susan, and best of luck in the recovery there. Yeah, it sounds like you have such a robust program, and I'm just tracking too that, you know, you've had this USDA Farm to School grant now, and that's allowing you to expand upon your goals and take further action steps. But even just in the process of writing the grant, I imagine you got a lot of clarity around what you actually wanted to accomplish and what is time bound and measurable and possible. So just
Yes.
another thought that folks might want to like think about grant writing as, you know, it is helping you in the long run build your program, even if it's just a one-year project. So yeah, thank you. All right, well, with that, I think I'm going to pass it over to Kelly Wilson, and she is going to talk a little bit about the new Florida School Garden Planner. This is our new resource we've been talking about.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yeah, I'm so proud and excited about what's happening in the school district of Lee County. And I am also very proud and excited to unveil the new Florida School Garden Planner. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and let you in on this new resource. So I really encourage you all to take some time to peruse this and yeah, just spend some time with it. We designed this resource as a companion to this 2-part webinar series because we would really love to see these taste tests happen across the state and, you know, the productive maintenance of the school gardens, you know, all throughout Florida. So we have created this planner that, as you can see, contains several different sections that will walk you through pretty much every single step of the garden planting, maintenance, harvest, and tasting process in order to accomplish this larger overall annual objective. So that is kind of, that's what we're working with at a glance. And the way that we designed it is for you to fill out different prompts and complete exercises to create your own plan. Because we would love to see you do that. So just scrolling through the first section, we have a vision casting worksheet. So you can think through kind of the what, the why, what is the purpose of your garden, and create a vision statement. Then we also have a space for you to create your garden team, thinking about who will support your garden, how can you leverage the different people in your school community and your external community to ensure that the garden thrives. We also have a section on creating SMART goals. So we have several different examples here, and a place for you to write in your own goals according to the 3 spheres of sustainability. And as Tiffany shared previously, we have an action plan template, so you can complete this template for each one of your goals as many times as you think is useful, really just thinking through the nitty-gritty of what it's going to take to accomplish that goal. And we also have, some action planning templates for specific tasks. So like how you're going to involve your students and create those curricular connections that we know are so important for garden-based learning, and really like tying in what you do in the garden to what you do in the classroom and making it a comprehensive learning experience. So we have these kind of questions to help you think through that, what lesson you might choose to accompany various gardening tasks. And then we also have some profiles for what we're calling kid-approved crops. So we're going to kind of dive right into that in the next part of our webinar, but we're featuring radish, kale, collards, lettuce, beans, and cherry tomatoes as those kid-approved crops. And then the rest of the document helps you to think through selecting which crop you'd like to grow, when to plan your planting and harvest dates, and then kind of maintaining and harvesting your crop, and thinking through who you might invite to your taste test or harvest party. So a lot of that will come in the second part of this webinar, and then also in our part 2 of the series in December. So that link for this document should be in the chat, and you can access it, and we'd love to hear your feedback. I personally hope that this will be the first version with several different iterations and improvements to come. So if you have feedback, if you think something is missing, we really do welcome it, and we hope that this is a useful resource for you. And let us know if you use it, how you use it. We're excited to give it to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelly. I hope you all enjoyed looking at the resource. We're excited to share it with you. And like Kelly said, the crop profiles, kid-approved crop profiles, are one of the things in the planner that we want to go through in detail with you today, so you can go ahead and start planning your garden if you haven't already, around whatever tasting event that you want to host. So we're going to dive back into Mentimeter and learn a little bit more about those crops, those kid-approved crops. So go ahead and access that same link if you haven't already for Mentimeter. And I will share my screen for Mentimeter. There we go. I see Selena put in the chat. Thank you. All right. Looks like we have 15 people still on, so that sounds about right. We'll go ahead and pull up the next slide. So kid-approved crops, here we go. Okay, first we want to ask you a few questions. So what do you consider when choosing what to grow? Like, what matters to you? And this is I believe you could toggle it left and right, scaling question. So
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if Tiffany froze for you too, but I'm just going to jump in. So hopefully you're seeing the Mentimeter on your screen, and we wanted you to think about, what you consider when choosing what to grow. So you can go ahead and answer that question there. I know for me, I think about the maintenance requirements of crops and if I'm going to actually have time to care for them. Oh, you're not sure how to do it, Lynn? So if you enter the Mentimeter online in the chat, then you can click on that link and you should be able to toggle back and forth the little sliders. Tiffany, I see you're back, so you can go ahead.
Thanks. I'm not sure where I got cut off. Sorry for the internet connection cutting me off.
We were still on question 1.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, the internet a bit. We're going to do our best to move on. If it does keep cutting out and you can't hear me, Kelly or Selena, if you'd like to continue, you're welcome to. So we're going to continue with question 1. Let me go ahead and share my screen, make sure that's set up. Okay. So what do you consider when choosing what to grow? It looks like most people have voted, and there's a lot around, let's see, maintenance. So maybe a low maintenance crop would be important to you. Space considerations, whether you have enough square footage to grow what you want to grow, days to harvest. I see, oh, okay, taste is up there, cool. And then cost, awesome. All right, well, let's move on to the next question. So now we want to know, what have you had success growing in your school garden? And you can go ahead and type anything into the chat and it should be able to appear as a speech bubble here. So what types of fruits or vegetables or sensory, maybe herbs? Oh, and if you haven't done it yet, that's okay too. We're going to have a question for you about what you want to grow. Beans, radishes, rosemary, awesome. Okay, some other folks just getting started. Kale, lettuce, basil, and other herbs. Okay, basil again, awesome. Broccoli, kale, potatoes. Tomatoes, peppers, oh, milkweed, that's awesome. For the pollinators out there. Carrots, radishes, sweet potatoes. Okay, so a couple things that are on our list today, and we're going to go over in detail some of those crops and why we want to recommend them to you. So I'm going to go ahead to the next final question before we dive into our quiz competition. So what type of garden design do you have? We're curious if you have a raised bed, maybe hydroponic towers, a container garden like an earth box, or it could even just be buckets. In-ground rows, or maybe you have an indoor classroom with grow lights or windowsill or an aquaponics system. And I apologize, I should have put still building here, so our friends who are just getting started could also vote. Okay, looks like a lot of raised beds and container gardens, awesome. Some hydroponics and in-ground, and a few folks with indoor classrooms and aquaponics, awesome. Okay, raised beds, definitely in the lead. All right, we'll move on here. And we're gonna move into a quiz competition. So you're gonna get to answer true or false to many questions about our kid-approved crops. So this first question is true or false. It is recommended to transplant radishes. We wanna see how much you know about these 5 crops. All right. Looks like a lot of falses. And let's see. Oh, I thought it would show the results or the actual answer. Well, the answer is false. You all are correct. The answer is false. It is actually recommended to direct seed radishes. So now we're going to tell you a little bit more about radishes. And we put in parentheses here the part of the plant that you would be eating when you're growing this, because that's really fun to track for kids, and an educational way to make that connection. So this is our root vegetable. The reasons why we like it: it's fun, it's easy for beginners, it grows super fast, and there's many, many different varieties, and it's really easy to harvest. This is really just one of the things that I would recommend to anybody just getting started in school gardens, even, you know, folks working in the early care setting. They're fun, they're easy to grow. You do want to make sure that you direct seed them into soil. They don't do well because it is the root. When you transplant them, it's a little sensitive. Again, they're great for containers and small spaces, maybe even indoor classrooms, if you have the right growing lights. They are cool season, but you could grow them year round in a classroom if you had the right setup. And they are only 20 to 30 days to harvest. Daikon radishes, which are the longer ones that are going to help you till up your soil if you're interested in that perk, those are going to take longer to grow, but most varieties like Cherry Belle, Sparkler, White Icicle, Champion are all shorter growing days to harvest. And our maintenance tip here is that you want to plant them in pH neutral soil. You want to water them regularly. They do have a problem with flea beetles often, or aphids. And when you're harvesting, you want to harvest just after the root has developed and it's kind of like peeking its head above the ground. And they'll become pretty bitter and tough if they're left out too long, maybe even start to get a little bit scaly on the top. So that's one way to tell. And your tasting tips. So radishes are pretty spicy and they're like a pretty intense flavor for kids. But I think that is a fun reason to try them. And if folks are, you know, a little bit nervous about how spicy they are, you might want to try pairing them thinly sliced with some kind of like healthy yogurt based dip, something that's going to cut that spiciness down a little bit. But we would definitely recommend radishes to everyone getting started in school gardens. And you can see how beautiful the colors are here, and there's just tons of varieties out there. All right, so our next crop, true or false? This is all about beans. So all bean varieties need a trellis. Do you think that's true or do you think that's false? All right, we've got a couple votes for false. All right, we'll vote for true. Okay. And the answer is false. So those 13 of you out there that said false, that is the right answer. Not all bean varieties need a trellis. So some bean varieties are bush beans, which can kind of sustain themselves on the ground and grow in about a 1 by 1 foot square foot area. So we'll go dive into a little bit more about beans. And beans are seeds in a pod, so technically they're the fruit, but we often like to think of beans as seeds when we eat just that part. So reasons why we like it: they're large seeds, are easy for kids to plant. I think that's really helpful when we're trying to get kids involved in the actual gardening process, not just the food consumption piece. They're easy to grow in poor soil, which often if you're getting soil brought in from outside areas, it might need a lot of tending to, and they're fun for seed saving. So you do want to direct seed them. They can grow really well in containers, raised beds, or in-ground situations. I believe probably in some aquaponics units too that I've seen. And when to plant, they are a warm season crop, so early spring or late summer here. And we recognize that Florida has large growing variety of growing zones. So in the crop profiles in the planner, we did get really specific about whether it's North Florida, Central Florida, or South Florida, so that you'll be able to look there and kind of quickly see when to plant. So days to harvest would be, bush beans would be 45 to 60 days, and pole beans would be 50 to 70. And like I said, there's some cool varieties out there that are bush, like Blue Lake, Cherokee Wax are the yellow ones. And then I really recommend these Scarlet Runner beans. They are a little difficult to grow in the South, but they're really fun because they are purple and like bright red, and just like a really beautiful bean that catches kids' attention, I think. You want to trellis the pole beans very early. Limit your fertilizing and plant rust-resistant varieties, especially in Florida where, you know, we're going to have so much of that moisture. And harvest your mature beans regularly for a continuous yield. That's a big benefit to growing beans in the school garden. You can let them dry on the plant if you want. And then once they are dried on the plant, they'll start kind of cracking open. And that's when you know that it's ready to save the seed. And our tasting tips is to remember to cut off the tips like you would your regular string beans, and they can be eaten raw, the string bean variety specifically. And I've tried with kids before the wax beans with an oil mint infusion. So just if you are growing mint in the garden, that's a really easy way to incorporate other sensory herbs. Just chop that up and put that with some olive oil and then steam your beans and put it all together. All right. So our next one is kale and collards. We combine these. So true or false, seed kale and collards closely together. They don't need a lot of space. Seed kale and collards closely together. They don't need a lot of space. All right, we got some trues, we got some falses. Okay, a couple more results coming in. All right, and the answer is false. So kale and collards actually do need some space. So they're one plant per square foot. So if you were to plant them close together in a row, you'd really want to make sure area to grow in. Kale is super popular in the media, of course, too. It's a continuous harvest. You can eat kale raw or cooked, and as well as collards within reason. And they are fun textured varieties as well. They're also pretty hardy. So you want to seed them indoors, and they can be easily transplanted. Again, these grow pretty well in containers, as you can see here. Like in this bucket system that they have, there's one plant per bucket because that's about a square foot. You can start them anytime in September through February, and you want to grow them in the cool season. And they take about 50 to 70 days. Kale takes less time. So with that in mind, again, thinking about when you might do this tasting event, counting backwards, and then making sure that you're planting early enough ahead to have them ready. So a couple of fun varieties for kids are dinosaur kale, which has that rough texture that you can see in this one over here. The Scotch varieties are usually the very, very curly ones for kale. And then there's a purple variety called Red Russian that I recommend. It's a little more tender as well. And for collards, we recommend the Georgia variety. And again, you want to make sure you space widely, water regularly. Something that most people don't know is that frost will help sweeten the leaves of anything in the brassica family within reason. So that's something in the cool season that you can kind of look forward to, but then also be mindful of maybe not a hard frost. And you do want to be mindful of cabbage loopers because they will, they like the kale and the collards as much as we do. And when you're harvesting, make sure to harvest from the bottom first. And you want maybe the first third of the plant. You can grab it by the base, pull down, and then out. And this is a pretty easy thing for kids to harvest. And if they do leave some kind of connected to the stalk, you can just go back and pull that stem off so it doesn't invite more rot into the plant. And for tasting tips, we like to recommend massaging kale in oil, salt, and some kind of acid to tenderize it. And you can do that just in a plastic bag and, you know, have the kids count to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the while they're massaging it, and then pass it to the person next to them. So it's a fun group activity and an easy way to cook something in the classroom or garden setting with little resources. You can also consider dehydrating them and adding spices or using collards as a wrap. All right, next CRID approved crop is our cherry tomatoes. So removing suckers from tomato plants is ideal for growth. Is that true or false? All right, we have some results coming in. Couple trues, couple falses. Looks like we're leaning more towards true. And this is a great teaching picture that I'll talk about once we clear the results. All right, I think we have most of our results, and the answer is true. So this one is true. Removing suckers from the tomato plant is ideal for growth. And this is true of our indeterminate varieties of tomatoes. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means. And this picture is really helpful. So this is the tomato stem right here. Hope you can see my cursor. It's the big one in the middle. And then you'll see that there's kind of a V and it's separating. This is the sucker part that's shooting straight up. So the part that's coming out with the leaves on it is supposed to be there. And what this means is that if you have an indeterminate variety, which most of our vining and cherry tomato plants are, they're just going to keep producing based on the conditions that they have. Whereas a determinate variety would basically have a set amount of energy and fruit and then predictable like structure, and then it's going to produce a die away.
So appears we have lost Tiffany. Yeah, so as she was saying, the determinate varieties will kind of stop at a certain point while the indeterminate varieties will not. And you will want that sucker that she pointed out. You can't see my cursor, but the one that was sticking straight up, you'll want to remove those. For ideal plant growth, as we said, the answer to this question was true. And so especially when it's little like that, you can, I'll turn on my video, you can just like use your thumb or use a clipper if it has a bit more, kind of if it's become a bit more sturdy. So depending on its size, you can just remove it, and that will help your tomato plant from becoming kind of a giant plant. It will also ensure that the tomato is putting the energy into creating the flowers and fruits, and photosynthesizing their energy to create the food that you want to eat, instead of continuing to grow main branches. So that is a big part of why it's important to remove those suckers. And I see that Tiffany has returned. So anything else you want to add about managing cherry tomatoes and growing them? Just finished explaining removing suckers.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know where I left off. I apologize, y'all. Yeah, I was saying that removing the suckers is a surefire way to get more fruit in the long run. So I'll go ahead and share the screen again, this presentation, and we'll move through tomatoes pretty quickly so that we can make sure to account for lost time and get through the rest of our presentation. So this is a fun image of someone in a school garden surrounded by cherry tomatoes that were not pruned and not supported or trellised or anything. And you can tell they get really wild. So this is an example of what will happen if you don't prune your suckers. But we like cherry tomatoes because they are an easy snack. They're fun colors, bite size. You definitely want to transplant them, and they like to be planted really deep. So you want to look for that first real leaf and node and plant all the way up there. Even if that's like a foot up the plant, the stem will put out roots very easily in the growing media, and it'll be better off that way, have a good root structure from the beginning. You can grow them in a variety of garden designs, and especially for cherry tomatoes, above all our other kid-approved crops, you want to make sure, based on North, Central, or South Florida, that you look at the growing season. We have a little bit shorter of a season in North Florida because it does freeze here. So days to harvest, again, a little bit longer, 70 to 100. So you need to allow time if you're going to do something like this for your tasting activity. Everglades variety is a really fun variety that does super well in Florida, given its name. Wild cherry, pear, sweet 100s, and sun golds especially. See someone love the sun gold there too. All right, and then maintenance, again, trellis regularly, prune your suckers, and and make sure you're planting them pretty far apart, especially if you are planting in a raised bed situation. And something else that's pretty important to know is that if it is outdoors and it's going to be raining, oftentimes if the fruit is pretty ripened and then it rains, the water will go to the fruit and it could burst them open. So a good activity to do with students before the rain is to go harvest any ripe or just under ripened fruit. And the tasting tip is to serve this in salsa. You could compare varieties in a taste test. There's tons of different varieties out there. And that's why we love cherry tomatoes. And so our last crop is lettuce. So true or false, lettuce prefers hotter weather for the best yield and taste. Lettuce prefers hotter weather for the best yield and taste. All right, get some answers coming in. Looks like false. And that is the answer. So this is false. Lettuce actually prefers cooler weather for the best yield and taste. And if grown in hotter weather, it will end up bolting pretty quickly, which means it's going to seed and it's going to become very bitter and tough. So you want to plant this either indoors in a garden setting or in a cool weather scenario. Just real quick, why we like it. It's great for garden to cafeteria programs like Susan shared about earlier. It's very easy to grow. It has a mild flavor, so it's really palatable for those who are just trying new things. You can direct seed or you can transplant, so it's pretty versatile. It does well in a variety of systems. Days to harvest is pretty versatile as well, in terms of 30 days for some kind of leaf varieties and up to 75 for the more heading, like bulbous varieties. We have some varieties listed there like Butter Crunch, Salad Bowl, Oak Leaf, and Paris Island are all great. And for maintenance, you want to make sure that you're thinning those head varieties. And if you are like watering pretty heavily, something else to be mindful of is to keep soil off of the leaves, because that can invite more pests and disease. And for cut lettuce, you want to harvest just above the soil line. And for leaf lettuce, you can use a cut and come again mentality. So for tasting, we encourage you to use this as a wrap or to stretch your harvest with produce that's purchased from other outside entities as well. All right. And we have a couple honorable mentions for our kid-approved crops. Consider adding these sensory plants to your gardens, especially if you're in an early childcare setting. So we have nasturtiums. This is an edible flower that's spicy that you can eat the flower or the leaf itself. They produce large quantities of flowers. It can be grown in lots of different systems, easily way to teach the part of the plant, and they're pollinator friendly. We also have lemon balm as a recommended item. So this is good for a sensory garden. It's also a very calming herb. So if you were to make some kind of lemon balm tea, that's kind of a good approach as well. And it doesn't spread all over the garden like mint does. So it's also fun for fun for leaf rubbing. So you can make a connection to art and things of that nature. I think it smells like a lemon Fruit Loop, which is also a very fun connection for kids, something that they're used to, familiar with. And lastly, we have sorrel. So you might be familiar with this wood sorrel variety. It has purple flowers. They are technically edible, but you don't want to eat too many of them because it could give you a stomach ache. But this cultivated variety of sorrel you can eat more of, and it's often referred to as sour leaf by kids. They like to use it as a wrap and put a bunch of other things inside of it. It helps foster an openness to trying something new since it's sour, and that's kind of a taste that they might be familiar with from candy. Or other items that they're eating. So, and it's also fosters learning connections to wild varieties. All right, and finally, now we want to know which kid-approved crops are you most excited to grow. So we have a couple different options here of everything we went through, from radish to green beans, collards, kale, lettuce, cherry tomato, sorrel, lemon balm, nasturtium, or something else. Do a second here. All right, we see some cherry tomato, radish, lemon balm, nasturtium. Okay, cherry tomato in the wind for sure. Give it one more second. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for voting. Looks like a lot of people are excited to try new things. Cherry tomatoes, especially lemon balm and nasturtium, all in the lead. And we hope that these profiles were helpful for you. Like I said, there's much more information in the planner that you have the link to. So be sure to check that out. And now we're gonna switch back over to our presentation. We are scheduled to go until 4:45 today. It's a little bit of an adjustment from previously. And actually, I would like to show you a video. We have that in mind for closing up our session today. So this is a video that was recorded in an effort to share more about square foot gardening and planting tips with. So I'm gonna go ahead and load that up for you all, and we'll watch about 5 minutes of that. It also includes a lesson in it related to Plan It, Map It that you can find on our website. So we will cover that as well. Just a sec. Okay. I do want to note maybe the sound might be a little hard to hear, so you can go ahead and adjust your volume if needed, and I'll turn on the closed captioning as well.
I'm not sure if you shared your video sound or your computer sound.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. It got turned off when I got disconnected. I will readjust that real quick.
Thank you so much.
Okay, try again.
So we're out here in the garden now that we've set up. We have our raised bed garden mapped out with our nylon string according to square foot gardening. And now that we're out here and you've seen a little bit about direct seeding, transplanting, and all of that in our presentation, I'm going to walk you through how you would plant your garden with students using the square foot gardening method. So first, hopefully before you come outside, you have your planting calendar and you've already mapped out what's going to go in each square according to the seasons and according to how many students you have. This is an activity you can do using our Plan It, Map It resource at faitc.org. And that accompanies the resource that we are going over in combination with this workshop, the Square Foot Garden Make and Take. And to make your planting calendar, you're also going to reference the Square Foot Gardening Guide here, so you can see how many plants per square foot go in each of these squares. So, some tips when I'm working with kids outside, I'd like to make sure that we don't lose track of our seeds if we are direct seeding into the garden. So using cups is a great idea. You can also use little baggies before you get to the outside area. And if we are doing direct transplanting using transplants, I would like to lay them out ahead of time. So right now we have a collard transplant, and according to our gardening guide, that is 1 collard plant per square foot. So you can lay them out ahead of time and then have students work in groups. I like them to work in teams of 3. So one student gets to dig the hole. The next student gets to take the transplant out. And then the next student gets to cover it up. So everybody has something to do. Nobody's sitting around idly. So next I'm going to move on to seeds. If we were to use seeds, another thing that we could do is use a handy-dandy muffin tray. So I like the muffin trays because they keep your seeds organized, and coincidentally, if you are planting something like radishes or carrots, each of those you can plant 16 per every square foot. You can see we have one little carrot growing there already. And one cool trick about this is that you can kind of lay it down. This is only 12, so you might want to add one more row. And then kind of tamp it down a little bit, and then you can see exactly where each seed goes. So then the students would take them out, put the seeds in the ground according to the depth that is also on your planting calendar, and then cover them up. And once you have your seeds in the ground, I wanted to point out another little tool here. This is just a blind, a piece of a blind that goes on the window that we made into a little label. And this is a charcoal pencil that works really well with this material. And you want to label, make sure to label your garden always, and make sure to put the date also that you planted your seeds at. Finally, here's another method I like to use when watering with students. So especially with little kids, you don't want them to take a full bucket, dump it onto your plants, and then it's going to spill everywhere and your seeds are going to be buried in water. So this is just a regular cup that I've drilled holes in. You could get a bucket of water somewhere else, have them dip it in, and then just kind of hold it over the plants, and a little bit will sprinkle out at a time. Or alternatively, and this is a better method, using the misting setting for newly planted seeds on your garden is a good thing to do. Last tip, if you have really small seeds, so something like lettuce that you can plant really close together, and then you can thin it later, and we'll be talking about thinning in just a minute. You can also put those in something like a spice holder. So I have two different styles of spice holders here, each with different size holes. And that's just another way for kids to keep track of their seeds. And you can just do, sprinkle a little bit at a time. And then when you go to cover up your seeds, I like to tell them it's like you're sprinkling sprinkles onto a cupcake. So you're just doing a light covering, because those seeds only need to be planted about 1/8 of an inch. So that's about all the tips and tricks I have for you today with our square foot gardening. I hope that this was helpful for you.
All right, thanks everyone. We're going to go ahead and switch back over to our PowerPoint real quick and close out our presentation. I hope that was helpful to you. And I recommend we have another, the end of that video is actually, like I said, Jen sharing a bit about some of our curricular resources that we have on the Florida Ag in the Classroom website. So I will reshare my screen and show you those. And you're welcome to visit our website. The link is in the chat as well. And also, you are welcome to watch the rest of that video on your own time. So, like I said, making a garden plan, this is a great exercise for complementing planting your garden with students. You can do in the classroom. Yo Seeds Wake Up is another great activity that complements this. And we also have, if you're looking for kid-friendly, fun planting guides, there's a Rainbow of Nutrition planting guides, which are currently out of stock, but we encourage you to go to our website and sign up for our newsletter so you can know when those are back in stock. And just to wrap up today, a little bit of a review of what we have covered so that we can move into our informal Q&A time and networking time. So today we covered a lot around getting clear on our vision, how to create an annual objective, and using goal setting and the SMART goal method to set your goals, as well as action planning. So all of that is again in the School Garden Leadership Series planner document that we shared with you, and we hope that you will put that into action and that it will be a helpful resource as you move forward with your gardening journey. We also covered plant and kid approved crops, as well as square foot gardening strategies and how to plant with students in the garden. And we have a couple of curricula options and all of that as well. So we are going to close that out, the formal part of our content in the webinar. And thank you so much to everyone who's been here. Please stick on if you would like to answer any other questions. And I'll just close by also sharing that we have our session survey It is only about 3 minutes long, so please go ahead and fill that out. The link should be in the chat as well. We do read them to inform these webinars and the resources that we create for you. You can also request CEUs by completing the PD survey, which should be in the chat as well. And if you haven't already, please join our Facebook group for connection. The password is Cuban Oregano. And we also have a shared Google Drive folder with all of our past resources from 2020 and 2021, and now 2022. And be sure to join us. Our next webinar of the series for this year is Thursday, December 1st, and we'll be having Chef Monta Hill here with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and we'll be diving into much more about the taste test and event structure and don't yuck my yum and trying new things and lots of exciting things around that. So we look forward to seeing you there, and we'll move into our Q&A now, which will be facilitated by Squalina. Thank you.
Hi, Tiffany, thanks so much. So this time is really just for anybody who would like to ask any questions. So feel free to share anything you have in the chat, and I can share some of the questions that we already had. I believe everything was pretty much answered already, but if anyone wants to chime in with more suggestions, we had a question